But I didn't want to have a rush on the front pews and get anybody trampled in the process. What's that? Not that big a liar. Well, I guess I could say that. We've had Thanksgiving. What do we do on Thanksgiving? We give thanks. Why do we give thanks? For everything God has done for us, for every way that He's blessed us. I know I'm asking the questions and answering them. That's a safe way to do it. That way I get the answers I want. But what's the next day after Thanksgiving? Black Friday. What do we do on Black Friday? Yeah, stay home. That's the right answer. Because that day's all about everybody going out and getting the great deals to buy more stuff. Even though the day before we just gave thanks for everything God's given us, we're going to not get more. And that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying it's interesting that in our culture, we've got this day called Black Friday because we go out and get more stuff. After the day, we give thanks for the stuff we've got. And then Christmas comes. What's Christmas all about? The birth of Christ? No. It's all the stuff under the tree. That's what we ask each other about after, hey, what did you get for Christmas? And I'm not saying that's a horrendously evil thing. I'm just saying it's kind of the way things are in the world. But what happens after Christmas? Where do we find ourselves after Christmas? After Christmas sales, we're going back to the stores. We've had Thanksgiving to give thanks for all the stuff we've got. We've had Black Friday to get more stuff. We've had Christmas to get more stuff. After Christmas, we go get more stuff because the sales are really on now, and we don't want to miss the sales. That's the thing. The stuff would still be there even if they didn't have the sales, but now they have the sales. And so you can get stuff, and it's cheaper. Do you need it? It's immaterial. Doesn't matter if you need it. It's cheaper. It's on sale. There are things, if you put them on sale and if the sale's good enough, even though you would never think to buy 5 or 6 of those previously, now you'll buy 5 or 6 of them because they're on sale. Is that in keeping with the theme of Christianity? It's kind of crazy that way. But that's perhaps the way we ought to think it should be in the world. Now, I'm not saying don't be economically minded. Does anybody else do coupons? I do coupons. I see something that says 20% off at the place to eat where I like to eat, I'm going to clip it and take it. And here's something you can do, though, when you do that. Give the savings to your server in the tip, along with whatever you would have given previously. It's not just about saving money, it's about God's economy, which has to do with God's values. And that's what I want us to think about tonight. What are the things that God values? We know Jesus said, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness. That's what He told us to do. He didn't say, get your 401k set up and get your plan done for retirement. I don't know if Jesus ever talked much about retirement as far as retirement here goes. Now, you've heard the joke, Christianity has a great retirement plan. Well, there's a lot of truth in that joke because there's a whole different set of values there. Sometimes I see other guys preach and I get really good ideas from what they say. I saw an illustration recently that I want to use tonight. Guy's name is Francis Chan. I don't know that he's a member of the church. I think he's a denominational guy. I don't know, but he used an illustration that I want to use tonight. And I'll use this rope over here that you probably haven't seen yet. I want you to let this rope represent eternity, except for the red part here. Now that red part, or pink part, however it looks to you, is not eternity, but that is time, and that is the time that represents your life on earth. However long or short that life might be, that represents your life. And of course, when your life is over, everybody goes into eternity one way or another. And this rope represents eternity. You can see it kind of goes down the steps and up through the door to give you the impression of it doesn't end. It's like Buzz Lightyear. To infinity and beyond. That's Buzz Lightyear, I think, to infinity and beyond. You know, the redneck astronaut would be going like to some finite place and not quite that far. But Buzz Lightyear goes to infinity and beyond. And we're talking about eternity. Time is not eternity. We need to remember that. And so this isn't a perfect representation, but you get the idea. This is our life. What do we do with our life? What do we do with the first part? Well, we usually spend most of the first part not being able to wait to get into school. And then we finally get into school and we can't wait to get out of school, but we got to have a good education. Why do we have to have a good education? Because you got to get a good job. Why do you need a good job? Because you got to work and work and work and save and save and save. Why do we work and work and work and save and save and save? That's what we spend most of this red part for, because we want this last little bit of the red part to be really good. Incidentally, that last little bit of the red part, that's when we're in the worst health, typically. We're all worn out because we've worked so hard all of our life to scrimp and save, to have something to make these last days the best days we could possibly have. And often it doesn't even work out that way, no matter how hard you work. Do you see the ridiculousness of all of that emphasis being on that little bit of time, when in reality, this is what we're facing? And it's not that we're facing this as if it's something bad. We're facing this because this is a gift of God. Why did Jesus come? I'm come that they might have life and have it more abundantly. And he's talking about eternal life, life that does not end. Eternity is not time. Time is not eternity. They're two completely different things, but I think this illustrates some of the fallacy of pursuing the things of this life and this world to the nth degree, and to the point that we lose focus on the things that have to do with this. I thought that was a great illustration. It helped me, and I hope it helps you. See, the internet's good for a few things. But thinking about, while we're here, how are we going to spend the time while we are here? I know we make money. We've got to have money. We just worked hard on a budget and had a budget presentation last week. Dayton had some good words to say this morning about how the silver and gold of this life needs to be spent on showing our spiritual values. All of that's very true. But money can be a distraction. That's why Jesus said you cannot serve God and money, God and mammon. In Matthew 6:33, he said, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things, all these material things, what you need to eat, what you need to put on, all those things will be provided for you. And in that same context, he talks about seeking God and mammon. In Luke chapter 16, usually when I think about seeking first the kingdom, I think about Matthew's quote in Matthew 6. But let's go to Luke chapter 16 where Jesus mentions this. But it's down in the text of the chapter after we get through a parable that Jesus tells. I like to see everything in its context. So starting in Luke chapter 16 verse 1, this is what Jesus says. He was also saying to his disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager, and this manager was reported to him as squandering his possessions. And he called him and said to him, what's this I hear about you? Give an accounting of your management, for you can no longer be manager. And the manager said to himself, what shall I do, since my master is taking the management away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig. I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I shall do, so that when I am removed from the management, people will welcome me into their homes. And he summoned each of his master's debtors, and he began saying to the first, how much do you owe my master? And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said, take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. So he's cutting his debt in half. He said to another, how much do you owe? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said to him, take your bill and write 80, cutting his bill by 20%. His master praised the unrighteous manager because he had acted shrewdly. And here's the key. Jesus is not saying it's okay to cheat people if you can get ahead. A lot of people might read this and, that's teaching that you can cheat. That's not what the point is. Look at what Jesus says in verse 8. The sons of this age are more shrewd in relation to their own kind than the sons of light. The guy Jesus had just been telling about in this parable was one of the sons of this age, and he was shrewd, but he was shrewd with regard to the sons of this age, not with regard to the next age. And he was more shrewd in the things of this age than the sons of light are in the things of that age, if you will. He went on to say, "So I say to you, make friends for yourselves by means of the wealth of unrighteousness." What's he mean, the wealth of unrighteousness? That just means the stuff of this world that's not going to last. King James calls it filthy lucre. And when I was a kid, I thought, I can't touch money because it's filthy. Because my mama taught me well, you don't touch things that are filthy, you'll get filthy. Filthy lucre, though, simply means it's a part of this world, and it's going to go away, so don't put your trust in it. Make friends of yourselves by means of the wealth of unrighteousness, so that when it fails, notice he doesn't say if it fails, he says when it fails. And I did a little research to see, is that an accurate translation? Yeah, that's an accurate translation. You don't translate that if, that's when. When it fails, they will receive you into the eternal dwellings. Here's another clue in verse 10, what he's talking about. He who is faithful in a very little thing is faithful also in much, and he who is unrighteous in a very little thing is unrighteous also in much. The very little thing is the stuff of this world. Very little things. We make them big issues. God says they're small. Verse 11, therefore, if you've not been faithful in the use of unrighteous wealth, who will entrust the true riches to you? Here we're getting to something. There's unrighteous wealth, but then there are true riches. Unrighteous wealth, true riches. I went down to Bass Pro yesterday. Yeah, I went out. I just needed to get out of the house. I thought, I'll go to Bass Pro. Maybe they'll have some Christmas sales. I'll tell you what they had some after Christmas customers. Sort of went through the store like this, pushing people out of the way. That's kind of the way, it wasn't that bad, but you get the impression. There's a lot of people in Bass Pro, and I just walked through, looked around. They didn't have anything I couldn't live without. It's a good thing, because like all of you, I am limited on this unrighteous wealth. There's a lot of things that I could, I'll just take that home because I might need that one day. I got a garage full of stuff that I might need one day. You do too. I've seen your garages. But there is the true riches. I'm telling you, I like Bass Pro, but you can't get true riches at Bass Pro. I like Walmart. There's a lot of good stuff at Walmart, but you can't get true riches at Walmart. Where do you get true riches? You get them from God. And it's always been that way. And it's always been this crazy desire of ours for the things of this world. I think we talked about that a little bit in class this morning, because we're all made from this earth, made from dirt. We desire the things of this earth. But God has given us a spirit from above, and that spirit from above knows to desire the things that are above. So it's a constant struggle every day, all of our lives, to pursue the things of God rather than the things of this world. And that's what Jesus is talking about when he gives us this parable here, trying to teach us the difference between the unrighteous wealth and the true riches. And then he says, and this is Luke's rendering of it in verse 13, no servant can serve two masters. Either he'll hate the one and love the other, or else he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth, material wealth. Verse 14, this is interesting. The Pharisees, who were lovers of money, Luke makes that point for us very clear, were listening to all these things and were scoffing at him. Why were they scoffing at Jesus? That sounds pretty smart to me. Why would they scoff? They knew what he was saying. He said to them, you are those who justify yourselves in the sight of men. Now think about that statement in context. You are those who justify yourselves in the sight of men. What would they be justifying themselves about? There's no point to justify yourself unless you're justifying yourself about something. Wouldn't it make sense to think that they were justifying themselves about their love of money? I think that's what he's talking about. You are those who justify yourselves in the sight of men, but God knows your hearts, for that which is highly esteemed among men is detestable in the sight of God. Look at verse 19. You see what happens in 19? Jesus starts telling us, not a parable this time, but I think an account of a rich man and Lazarus. You probably know how this goes. Lazarus was a poor man. He was a righteous man, but he was a poor man, and he was so sick that he had to be laid at the rich man's gate. And while he was laid at the rich man's gate, he longed for the crumbs that fell from the rich man's table. And the rich man fared sumptuously every day. The text says he had fine clothing. He was having a great life. But both of them died. Lazarus, when he died, was taken by the angels. The angels of God came for Lazarus, and they carried Lazarus into the bosom of Father Abraham. And for the Jews reading this, there would have been no greater comfort than to think that they were going to be with Father Abraham. But the rich man lifted up his eyes in torment. Now, is that because he was a rich guy and all evil people are rich? Well, I hope not, because by the standards of the world, you know, you and I are rich. His problem was he wasn't rich towards God. It's just like the other rich guy that Jesus talks about in another story, whose crops had bumper crops, as we would say today, and his barns wouldn't even hold him, and he tore his barns down, built bigger barns, and once he had his bigger barns built and full of all the stuff with which God had blessed him, what did he say? He said, "Take your ease, soul, just rest and eat, drink, and be merry." And God said, "You fool, this night I'll require your soul of you." And Jesus asked the question, what will a man give in exchange for his soul? Have you heard of Kansas? Not the state, I mean the rock group Kansas. They've got a song. I've always liked it. I don't agree with everything it says, but it's called "Dust in the Wind." Heard this song? I close my eyes, only for a moment, and the moment's gone. All my dreams pass before my eyes, a curiosity, dust in the wind. All they are is dust in the wind. Same old song, just a drop of water in an endless sea. All we do crumbles to the ground, though we refuse to see. Dust in the wind, all we are is dust in the wind. Now don't hang on, nothing lasts forever but the earth and sky. It slips away, and all your money won't another minute buy. Some of that stuff I don't believe. The earth and sky won't last forever, although it seems like that, the people who are born into it and pass away from it. God says in Hebrews, he's going to fold it all up like a garment one of these days. He'll last forever, but this universe will be folded up like an old shirt and put away. And we're not just dust in the wind, but it is true that when we come to the end, all of our money won't buy another minute of life. All the money we could put together won't buy another ounce of character. All our money won't buy another ounce of courage. All the stuff that the world finds valuable, it's detestable in the eyes of God. And so he tells us about these two men, one who had everything that worldly people could think you'd ever want, and he dies and he's got nothing. You remember the red part of that rope? Oh, that red part was good. But now he's in eternity. And if you want to talk about value, do you remember what he asked Abraham? He said, "Send Lazarus that he might dip the tip of his finger in water." How much water can you get on the tip of a finger? But that water was oh so valuable. Just the water on the tip of his finger was oh so valuable because he had neglected spiritual things all of his life. And then it comes down to the end and he's hurting. And now that water is valuable, but he can't buy it. It's not there. It's not there. It's interesting, it's not just money, the things that this world values, but it's busy stuff and ideas and teachings. I remember from our class this morning, and if you were in that class, maybe you remember talking about 2 Corinthians chapters 10 and 11. Two things were said there. In chapter 10, Paul wrote this, chapter 10, 2 Corinthians 10, verse 3. Though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but divinely powerful for the destruction of fortresses. We're destroying speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God. And we're taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. We're fighting a warfare right now. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I've watched some of the videos of ISIS being bombed, because that's the warfare of this world, trying to eradicate evil in that way. But how much better would it be if we could reach those guys with the gospel of Christ, those ISIS guys? If we could change the way they think, change the way they see the world, change the way they see themselves, change the way they see people who are infidels. Isn't that interesting? We're the infidels. But that's what Paul is talking about here. Speculations, lofty ideas, things that are wrong. That's the power of the gospel of Christ. That's the power of the truth of God's word. That's the only thing that can really overcome all the wrong in the world. War won't do it. We have to fight war because sometimes that's the answer we've got in this world. But the reality is that it's got to be something more. We know that. When Paul wrote to Timothy, he talked about doctrines of demons, deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons. A doctrine is just a teaching, and a demon is an evil spirit of some kind. So evil spirits are coming up with teachings? I would think so in this world, with all the crazy things that people believe that are just heinously evil. Yes, teachings of demons. They're in the world. Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, says, I wish that you would bear with me a little foolishness, but indeed you are bearing with me, for I'm jealous for you with a godly jealousy. I betrothed you to one husband so that to Christ I might present you as a pure virgin. Now you think about that relationship and you're seeing value. Christ, the Son of the Almighty God who spoke the universe into existence, and the relationship with His church, there's a value that can only be bought with the blood of Christ. And that's exactly what He did with blood. He bought this relationship. But I'm afraid that as the serpent deceived Eve, he says in verse 3, by his craftiness, your minds will be led astray from the simplicity and purity of devotion to Christ. For if one comes and preaches another Jesus, whom you have not preached, or if you receive a different spirit, which you have not received, or a different gospel, which you have not accepted, you bear this beautifully. Now, why did he say that? Almost this whole letter has been written because Paul was trying to defend his apostleship. Some had come into Corinth and said, that Paul, he's not a real apostle. He doesn't have real authority. Listen to us. Listen to what we have to say. And Paul is writing to the church and saying, these guys are coming in with different teachings, and you sit and you just soak that stuff up. But I try to give you the truth, and you fight me, tooth and nail. It's crazy, but it's the world. What happened with Jesus? They crucified him. What did they do wrong? Nothing. Did he help anybody? That's all he did. And he was crucified because of this spiritual dichotomy, these values that we want to learn. And I think it's still being expressed in different ways. Some of us were talking about this recently. Anybody see the Noah movie? You know the story. The book was better. But if you saw the movie or heard about the movie, and maybe you didn't see the movie because you heard so many bad things about it, it was crazy. It was all, I don't know why they don't just stick to the book. Genesis 6 through 9, 4 chapters. There's your story, and there's a lot of stuff in there, and most of what was in there never got put in the movie. I can't figure that out. Now, here's the deal. I went to see Exodus a couple of weeks ago because they've now come out with a movie on Exodus. Same thing. Exodus, the part of the movie, or the part of the story that the movie dealt with, was the first 14 chapters of Exodus. So many departures, you can't count them. Now, nothing against the Lord of the Rings stories. I really enjoyed those. I enjoyed the movies. How many books are there to the Lord of the Rings series and The Hobbit and everything? Well, there's a whole bunch of books, and every one of those books has hundreds of pages. and they took great pains to stick with everything that was in the book. They didn't in every case, but they tried to. Harry Potter series. Now, I'm not here to talk about witches and all that stuff and how, if that's right or wrong, but you got this Harry Potter series with several books, thousands of pages, probably thousands, I didn't count them all. But they try to stick with the books. But in this world, you come to 4 chapters out of Genesis, and they can't give it to us like it says. They come to 14 chapters out of Exodus, and they can't give it to us like it says. What is it about that? If you get on your phone and you text people, you might see, and you might see it on Facebook, people going, OMG, OMG, OMG. What does that mean? Nobody's going to say it out of respect, but it means, oh my God. And if you watch TV, time after time after time, you'll see people in sitcoms, in dramas, in action movies, in reality shows. They're not very real. But they say this over and over. Oh my God, oh my God. Oh. Now, what God do you think they have in mind? Why do people not say, oh, Buddha? I'm not trying to make fun. I'm just making an observation. People don't say that, do they? They don't say, Lord Krishna. Nobody says, doggone it to Odin. But they'll say, Jesus Christ. And you know they're not praying. Why is it that they bring up a reference to the true and living God to curse? Why is it that they bring up a reference to His Son to curse? When I was in the service, I was having a discussion with an atheist, and I said something that he thought was silly, and he said, oh, God. I thought, wait a minute. You're an atheist. How come you say, oh, God? And he gave me an answer, but I knew why he said, oh, God. Because the concept of God is prolific in every human mind. And in this world, the concept of God is resisted. And so we try to value things that have to do with God. We try to value things because we know that we're only in that red part for a little while, and once the red part's over, we're into the white. And if our relationship with the Lord is good, it's going to be fantastic. And I'm not talking about good by us being good. I'm talking about good by us being faithful, because He doesn't require us to be perfect and sinless. He requires us to be faithful. There's a huge difference. And in this life, we're coming to the next big holiday, New Year's. What do we do at New Year's? Make resolutions, traditionally. I want to encourage you, if you make resolutions. If you don't, it's okay. Nothing in Scripture says you have to make a resolution on New Year's Eve. But typically, it's a time for self-appraisal, self-examination, for looking at what might need to be changed. Typically, that's what we do. I want to encourage you to take a look at your life, because there's always something worthy of being changed. Amen? And if you can look at your life and determine, based on spiritual values and things that last, that you can do something to make some positive changes, do that. For example, I'm a husband. Could I be a better husband? Don't ask Debbie. I could be a better husband. I'm a father. Could I be a better father? I know I could be a better father. Everything that I am, I could make some improvement on. And I might want to do that. And no matter how much I want to do that, that's great to want to do that, but how much changes because we want? Things only change because we do. If you want your life to be better, I like what I read recently. There is no remote. You have to get up and change it yourself. Now, that's not Scripture, but it's scriptural. Not everyone who saith unto me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but those who do the will of my Father who is in heaven. And you know that God would have you look at yourself. That's what we read in the last chapter of 2 Corinthians. Examine yourselves to see whether or not you're in the faith. That was Paul's charge to the saints at Corinth. I think it's a great charge for us to examine ourselves to see whether we're in the faith. I do this in the silly things of this world. I examine myself. I want to make steak and gravy. Do I have what I need to make steak and gravy? If I don't have what I need to make steak and gravy, I'm going to the store because I'm going to secure what I need to make steak and gravy. I'm going to go hunting. I love to hunt. You know how many hours I spend getting my stuff together to hunt? It's the same when I fish. I go to places where they sell fish and stuff, and I just stand there and I look at it. Because there's bound to be something there I need that I haven't seen yet. What if we all took that same kind of interest in spiritual things? What if there was a store you could go to and you could look into that store and just kind of peruse and browse and absorb what they have to offer for spiritual vitality and vigor and value? Well, isn't that kind of what this is? Now, it's not the kind of store where you go in and you pick what you want and you leave the rest. Because eventually we're going to need everything in here. But it's a store. And it's filled with valuable goods. They last forever. They don't wear out. You don't have to worry about receipts. And it's good stuff. So this New Year's Eve, when you're making your resolutions, if you do, make some that will last. Make some for good. Make some about your relationships. Make some about your thinking. Make some about your daily behaviors. You pick them out. You know what needs changing. And that's the lesson for tonight. We're going to stand and sing a song of encouragement and invitation. And if you need to come, think about this. You're already closer than you would have been if you hadn't come down. Seriously. Seriously. If you need any kind of help from this congregation, if you need to be baptized into Christ, if we can pray with you and help you with anything at all, that's what this song's for. We're inviting you to come. Come on down. Let us help you if we can.